All right. Hello, and welcome to On My Mind with Mark. Just coming on and starting a new format. It'll be Fridays from 7 to 8, and it's going to be a myriad of topics. Tonight, we're actually have interesting person on, HM3 Dan Zarn. He was on the USS NIMITZ for 2 years. Also want to introduce my co-host, Karen. She could actually go by the name by Adrian. So how are you doing, Adrian?
Good. It's great to be on the show. I'm just super excited to hear more about the USS Nimitz, being that it's one of the first ships in its class.
And Dan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your service, and thank you for agreeing to come on and talk to us. We've got just about an hour on Blog Talk. That is, we can run a little bit more on StreamYard if we want to. So it was a little secret that people may not know is these are indeed my parents. So this is something that I got to live with when I was growing up. I've always thought that it was interesting to be able to talk to my dad about it, and history is a big thing, so keeping the story alive is good. So I think to kick off, Dan, can you give us a small synopsis of what it was like to join the Navy? A synopsis for your time between when you joined to the time you joined the Nimitz?
Yeah, sure. Well, I joined in August '85. I went to boot camp at Great Lakes, Great Mistakes they call it, Illinois. It was hot because it was August, October. And it was just like boot camp. Got your head shaved, got off the bus, you got abused from the morning till you went to sleep. And then sometimes in the middle of the night, they'd get you up to abuse you some more. And it was just to make you a tougher person, a person who could understand that there are going to be variables in your day and night when you're on duty, when you actually go to your duty assignment. And, it was very interesting. It was something, I'd seen plenty of boot camp movie kind of things before, so I had an idea of what I was in for.
Okay. So with your boot camp, how long did that last?
That was from August '85 to October '85.
So just a couple of months.
Yep.
Okay.
And I had signed up to be a corpsman, so after boot camp, I went right across the street from Great Lakes Training Center to the Naval Hospital there, the training center there.
Okay.
So
and then
was the Naval Hospital Corps School, Great Lakes, Illinois.
Okay. So what made you want to become a corpsman as opposed to any other job that they might have in the Navy?
Well, having sort of a medical background with mom as a nurse and being interested in that kind of thing. From the early age when we took swim lessons, as soon as I was able to, I had my CPR and life-saving and those types of things at a very young age. So I'm always interested in it.
So what led you to be posted on the Nimitz?
Well, I was working in Idaho at a lumber mill, and I'd worked there for about a year and a half, 2 years, and then the Canadians flooded the market with cheap lumber, and we couldn't keep up with it.
Mm-hmm. So then that left you looking for another job.
Right. So we took a vote. We were either going to close the facility or we were going to take a $5 an hour pay cut. And we decided to close the facility. And then my brother-in-law, Greg, came by one day, like recently, and he said, "Hey, I got in the Navy. There are all kinds of jobs open. It's only 4 years. What the heck?" So I went down and I applied, and I got in as a corpsman.
Okay.
So I went down and I applied.
Might be having a little bit of an audio issue, but I think we'll figure it out.
I want to say hello to Michelle, who's joined us.
Hello, Michelle. How you doing? So, after you joined the Navy and went through boot camp, and then went to corps school,
Yep.
I assume they gave you a posting.
Yes. After corps school, you got to fill out what's called a wish list. 3 places in all of the Navy's postings that you would want to go. And so I'm like, okay, Florida, Hawaii, and Bremerton. Because I knew Bremerton on the West Coast. I had been out on the West Coast before backpacking in the Selway Bitterroots and on the Ocean Beach Wilderness area.
Okay. Why don't you tell our audience, for those who may not know, what Bremerton's like? What is its niche? What is its main function in the area?
Well, Bremerton has a long, long tradition of being the Northwest biggest shipyard. And it's a shipyard for ships to come in and get fitted, refitted, scrapped out, overhauled. Lots of work being done on there all the time. And there were both submarines and surface ships. But the Nimitz was the kind of the flagship. She had been an East Coast ship and came around the Horn to be a West Coast ship.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, my dog is going nuclear. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened around the Horn? Was there any incident? I know sometimes there are really high seas around the Horn of Africa.
Yeah,
that can be a difficult journey.
The highest seas in the world are at the bottom of South America. It's called going around the.
Oh, so it's not Africa; it's South America.
South America. Yep.
Oh, I was wrong.
That gets you from the Atlantic to the Pacific.
Okay.
I assume the Nimitz was too big to go through the Panama Canal, and that's correct. Why you were transiting.
That is correct. Yep. On a side note, I was down in one of our medical supply locations, and there was an I-beam down there that one of the old timers showed me. He said, "This is what happens when you go around Cape Horn in a ship this size," and it's an I-beam that's about 1.5 to 2 inches thick. And if you can think of an I-beam with the webbing and the other sides also being about 2 feet across. So it's an I-beam that's 2 feet across. The webbing is 2 feet. And then the other I-beam that's connected to the outside of the ship is 2 feet. Had about a 2-inch buckle all the way from the outside to the inside of that beam.
That's a lot of force.
Oh, yes.
That's actually a little scary.
Yes.
Hey, I want to just pause and welcome Tim Bob, who asks, "Where is Nikki?" So I think Nikki's in the twilight zone of internet reception in Farmington.
Tim, she's still at home. I'm actually over at Mom and Dad's. She wanted to stay home tonight.
When I think your internet there, the reason why you're here is that Farmington, Minnesota seems to be like a Bermuda Triangle in itself.
Yeah.
As far as the internet.
Right.
Also, Michelle, when Sil said she's happy to be here and listen to the amazing stories. Thank you, Michelle.
So getting back to the Nimitz. So what you were saying is it transitioned from a East Coast ship to a West Coast ship. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, when she got in, I was working at the Naval Hospital in Bremerton. I'd already done 2 years there. And I had put in for optometry school in Boston. I really wasn't much into like surgical emergency kind of stuff, although I had done some of that. And then they lost the paperwork and said that I was already under orders to report to the Nimitz.
Military likes.
I was totally cool with.
The military likes losing paperwork.
It sometimes happens. I understand.
So why don't you tell me what was your first day once you received the orders? Can you tell me what happened from once you got the orders? I mean, did they give you like a couple of days to report? And tell us what it was like actually reporting and what it was like stepping foot on on this huge ship for the first time.
Yeah, it was kind of culture shock. Completely different than anything I'd ever done. I mean, it was a huge gated, guarded facility, and you had to have all your ducks in a row to get in. And then they had just a huge, long list of places for you to go, things for you to do. They had to do all the paperwork, just all kinds of stuff. And I probably was there for a few days before they had brought me down to the ship and introduced me to the people who I was going to be working with, who then took me up to the ship and basically showed me, how to salute, how to request permission to come aboard and all that kind of thing that you do. And then they took me down to the medical area, which is off, one of the, when you come in, you're basically on the, one of the hangar bays. And then it was on a little passageway on the starboard side. And then medical is just, in a few bunks. So we got into there, and then they gave me a big tour of the facility. Pretty cool. I got to meet the petty officer in charge of the treatment room, and that's where I was going to be taking over. Super nice guy, learned a lot. And then we also had a flight surgeon, another doctor who could perform surgery, and then we had a PA as well,
which is what, a physician assistant?
Physician assistant. Yep.
Okay. Michelle asks, was it hard to be away from your family? Well, you're going to have to say yes, because your family's online with you.
Yes. Not at first, because I had no idea how big that ship was. I mean, you see it from the outside, you can see it from a long ways away and cover it up with your thumbnail. But until you actually stand right next to it, it's like, oh my gosh, this thing is huge. Yeah. I'm sorry, what was the question?
Did you miss us? And I think you were starting to say, like, it's probably a little overwhelming at first. And so that probably, like 100% of your mind is probably focused on learning what you have to learn to survive.
Yeah. Yes. Right. And while we were in port until the ship deployed, there was training exercises. And then since I lived in Bremerton, I got to go home at the end of the day. But then there came a time when we were doing things 24/7 on the ship and getting prepared to take her out. They did a lot of retrofitting, and every time they did a retrofitting, we had to take her out, stress test her, make sure that everything was up to par, and then we'd come back in again for a while. And then I'd get to see them again for maybe a week, 2 weeks, and then it's back out to sea again, testing this new thing. And then there was war games we went to in San Diego, and we were gone for a few weeks at that time. Then I came back, and then it was not long after that we got our orders to go to the Pacific.
What was it like? I remember as a kid, I don't remember ever seeing you off, but I remember coming out to the pier and seeing you come back in. What was it like? Explain to us the whole process of getting underway.
The best part was coming in, and you'd come through the Straits of Juan de Fuca, and that was some of the highest waves that we had in the Pacific Northwest, is right at the mouth of the Strait of Juan de Fuca. The ship rolls. You don't think the ship doesn't go forward and backwards so much, but it does roll left to right. And it's so big that it takes a long time for it to roll to one side and hang there for a minute and then roll back. And so you'd come in and then they'd go past. There are some other areas where the flight crew would fly off, like to Whidbey Island. And then they would you'd come through all these little channels to get up into Bremerton. So it took quite a while, but it was nice once you got into the Straits of Juan de Fuca. You were home. You knew you were home. Nothing was going to hurt you there. And then you knew you were going to get to see your family for, at least a few days, if not, a couple of weeks, depending on what the plans for the ship were.
What was a normal turnaround after a standard? Well, I'm sure there's no standard deployment, but what was the average turnaround?
Well, there really wasn't anything average because she had just come to the West Coast, and she had a lot of refitting to do. I mean, we made a number of trips. San Diego, we went under the Golden Gate Bridge. We even tried to time it at low tide, but we were still too high, and the welder had to scramble up to the top to cut the top 6 feet of the antenna off so that we could squeak underneath.
Jeez.
Lots of things like that. We got some time down in California and San Diego, some leisure time, and then we were come back up to pick up the whole crew and get the planes on board, and then we headed off for our Westpac, which is the Western Pacific cruise.
Okay.
Hey, I just want to pause and ask those people that have come on just to say hi in the chat, kind of at least your first name and where you're coming in from. Where do you live? Sorry to interrupt. Dan, when you talked about the Straits of Juan de Fuca and being the roughest seas, and you talked about the Cape, were there times also where you had like calmer seas where you could go up to the deck, and could you see any ocean life from there?
Oh yeah. Well, one of my duties was the motor whale boat on the port side, which would be the left side. So LEFT, PORT, that's how you remember your port from your starboard. But I was on the port side, so I had to go up every day and sign the log. Well, while I was up there, my whole time, basically from the time I wake up till I go to bed, is inside steel walls, and there's no natural light. You don't get, the only thing you get to see is you can watch flight deck TV, and that's just planes taking off and guys walking around. So when I went up to the motor whaleboat sponson on the port side, I would check the logbook. You can look down around the motor whaleboat suspended there in the ocean, but they had this neat little window looking forward, and you could kind of hang your head out of it. And I would watch the dolphins leaping out of the wake that the Nimitz created, about a 6-foot wake. And these dolphins would be jumping and just having a good old time. And you could look up, you could see sunshine, clouds, raining, whatever happened to be that day. It was my little slice of heaven.
Nice.
I suppose not everybody on the ship kind of had that ability to do that.
No, only me and the other lifeboat captain.
Oh,
Because there was one on the port side and one on the starboard side.
Okay. So talking about, and I know you probably can't talk much about this subject because it is still an active vessel and there's OPSEC with it. But do you remember there being like restricted places that you would try to stay away from?
Honestly, I was too busy to go wander around. They encourage us to wander around the ship and see different places so that, if you had to go there in a hurry, you'd know how to get there. And I knew the places where I could go, where I had to go. I'd stop into the barber shop, stop into the chaplain's office. The chaplain's office was right underneath the front cats. And so you'd be sitting there, boom, and you get this huge steam as the piston pulled all the way back. You couldn't hear anything for about 40 seconds, and then it would reset. Wow. And then you could hear it talk again. It was very strange. So they also they used that steam for the laundry, and they used it for the steam room in our workout area, and to heat the ship. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Steam room and a workout area on a ship, that's quite a luxury.
It had a lot of things. We had a barber shop, we had a bookstore, 2 great big dining facilities. It was everything you needed, really. It was a house, floating house afloat.
So how many people on a standard deployment? How many people can that thing house?
I believe we had 6,000.
Wow.
So the majority of that is what you call a ship's company, or is there a split?
Yeah, it was somewhere around 3,000.
Okay.
And then when the air wing came on, and depending on who else we had on, but a lot of people. A huge floating city.
Right.
Wow.
24/7.
So I want to mention that Michelle Lancel is actually signing in right now from Green Bay, Wisconsin, but lives in Lakeville, Minnesota, where we're at, and mentions that she went to school with CR.
That we did.
So thrilled she's joining us. And I want to say hi to Sue Helm from one of my favorite places to say, Walla Walla, Washington.
Hi, Sue.
So you were mentioning the Westpac deployment.
Yep.
Tell us about that. So would you leave straight from Bremerton and I suppose just go somewhere in the Pacific, or do you have certain spots you would go to? So
when you're doing a Westpac, that's like a 6-month deployment at least. We did lots of little, like I say, little shakedown cruises, we'd call them. And then there were some like exercises that we had down by San Diego. And all of those took a few weeks, and then we'd be back, and then we'd go gear up for another thing. But yeah, when you went to do your Westpac, there was a lot of preparation in that because you were going to be gone for at least 6 months. And when we did do the Westpac, that would have been in 80. Got my notes here. Oh, well. Anyway, it would have been like 87, 88. We left, went out the Straits of Juan de Fuca. I always pull duty, whoever coming in or going out. So I got this little chair with wheels on the bottom of it, and I would set half of my notes on one side of the medical treatment room and half the notes on the other side, because when the ship would roll to one side, I would roll to the other side and start working on that. And then the ship would roll back to the other side, and then I'd go work on that side. And I always pulled duty every time we came in and out, and it was a good, 8-10 hours, get all the paperwork squared away for the day. So getting back to your question, when we went on the Westpac, first thing we do is we get out the Straits of Juan de Fuca, we hang a right, and we go up around the Arctic, past Alaska,
Oh, wow.
and we go say hi to the Russians.
What was it like when you went to the Arctic? Was it cold?
Icebergs,
or?
When you're out underway, you really don't go above decks too much.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's just a lot of wind, a lot of sea, and it gets much colder when you get up there, of course. But you gotta go poke the bear a little bit.
Yeah. So Kaylee Fowler says hello, Kaylee. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Kaylee.
Hey,
so
Kaylee.
Dan, you mentioned documenting like notes, like you were in the Straits of Juan de Fuca. You had it set up so you could do that rolling your chair, but that kind of made me think, like, what was a day like as a corpsman? I know that from working in as a medical coding compliance and coding manager for 30 years, that you probably did things that physician assistants do or clinical nurse practitioners do. And what was a duty day like for you?
Well, we would wake up about 5 a.m. and we would go down to the mess hall. We'd probably go get a shower first and then get all of our gear on, and then go down to the mess hall, eat, and then the mess hall is right next to medical. So then we just get right to work. Sick call was first thing in the morning from 8 till 10. And then 10, we'd have a little break. I'd usually go grab my lunch at that time, because then we'd have afternoon minor surgeries and clinics until supper time, really around 6 o'clock or so.
So you had a large scope of responsibility that you could do, and it's just not like a regular nurse.
Yeah, it really surprised me. Once you learned the skills and proved proficient in them, then that was it was part of your job now. And then you'd learn the next thing, and the next thing and the next thing. And then pretty soon they were like, okay, cool. You can do your thing. And here's your pile of paperwork for the day. And, there's a line of guys out and down the hall about 60 feet waiting for sick call. So
what kind of things did they come in for in sick call?
Oh my gosh, everything. You got an earache, you got your sinuses hurt, your ears hurt. You got some kind of infection. You overdid it on shore leave, and you're paying for it now. And yep.
So if they were on the Nimitz, if they were a sailor on the Nimitz or whatever their position was,
yep,
and they couldn't just like call in sick. They had to go to sick.
Oh no.
Call.
Yep. First, they had to go to their boss and say, I need to go to sick call. And the boss wants them to be healthy. So he would say, okay, go. So then there'd be this line all the way down this passageway of people waiting to go to sick call. And I had, once I became the head corpsman there in the treatment room, I had about 3 other corpsmen with me that were kind of learning where I started from.
Okay.
And
yeah, that makes sense.
The doctor, we didn't use him a whole lot, but we did use the PA a lot. He was a great guy.
So I know, like in practice, depending on the state you're here in the United States, the doctor is like in the clinic, and then there's like treatment rooms. Were you in a big open area with everyone, or did you have little curtains? Or
nope. No, there's really no privacy in the Navy.
Okay.
So when you're on ship, except for the line of people waiting, once you came in that door, you'd whoever greeted you first is who you'd go to. Unless you had, I had some people that had, recurring things that I knew about that they'd go, hey, can I get you? Yeah. So then we would work with them. And this thing went on till, for hours. Well, until everybody was done. We didn't turn anybody away. So it might be even 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon before we finally got everybody done. But
so with 3,000 or more people on the ship, if you're going out for a 3 to 6 months cruise and somebody has hot appy or appendicitis, what did they do? I mean, they don't fly them off ship.
We have an OR suite right next to the treatment room, and we have flight surgeon. So we take it out.
Okay.
I scrubbed up for that one.
Okay.
Oh, so you actually had a case of appendicitis on board.
Yeah, we've had quite a few things on board.
Right. So you have your own operating room.
Yep. We have
anesthesia. You need anesthesiologists.
Yep, we had an anesthesiologist.
Our dog has a zoomies. If anybody can hear that.
Yeah, we had a pharmacy. We had an X-ray tech. We had audiologist. We had.
Really sorry about the dog, y'all, but it's funny.
Preventive medicine. We had a medical records. We did it all. Pharmacy, everything. It was we're all self-contained. It's like a floating city.
So pretty much anything you can find in a civilian ER or urgent care, you guys had on board.
Yep.
So was the preventive medicine like shots, annual physicals, that kind of thing?
The whole thing. Yep. And everybody got cycled through twice a year.
Oh, that's better than a civilian population where, maybe once a year if you can get them in.
You got 3,000 guys living in confined quarters, and things can spread. So you want to stay on top of that.
Okay. What kind of shots did you administer?
Well, I gave some penicillin shots. Other than that, the preventive medicine guys had a whole room across and down the hall where they would set up if we were having shot evolutions, where everybody had to get, like, we're going overseas, so now we got to get certain shots for overseas. And they would call everybody just like sick call. You'd line up and they would run you through a batch at a time. And they had the pneumatic inoculator, and you'd just, stand still and there'd be a guy on each arm and they'd give you your shots. And then if you needed any special shots, because you were going to be doing some duty besides what the normal duty was, and you had to have something else, they would give you that at that time.
Wow.
Yeah, if anybody hasn't seen the pneumatic inoculator, that thing is barbaric. It's basically you hook this thing up to an air compressor and you put in whatever you're going to give in a shot, and if you move, it'll slice you open.
Yeah.
Ooh. I want to say good.
It
thank you,
a little puff of air, along with the serum under your skin.
Oh. So did people jump? Like when you give it to them, if it's pneumatic, or it's just so quick?
If people are in a hurry and you're in a line and it's like next, you might stand there and then think, oh, it's my turn to leave now. And just about the time that they squeeze the trigger, it's very rare, but it can happen.
Okay. Wanted to say good night and thanks to Michelle. She has to sign up early and said she'll rewatch what she misses. So.
Oh, good night, Michelle. Thank you for joining in.
Definitely.
All right, so we've kind of covered, I don't want to call it mundane, but the day-to-day of part of your duties there. And you kind of did touch on doing minor surgery clinics. what would that what is a minor surgery clinic?
So after lunch, once we got through the regular sick call guys, people who had warts or hangnails or infected toenail, and a hangnail in their toe that got infected or whatever. I had a minor surgery clinic, and for the first 2-3 weeks, the PA or the doctor that was there oversaw it, and then after that point, they were like, "You know what you're doing, so." We got stuff to do and you got stuff to do. So just carry on. If you have any questions, come see us. And so there are all kinds of stuff that we did.
Did you do cyst removal if they weren't deep, or like pumas?
All kinds of cyst removal. Basically anything. If you had earwax, if you couldn't hear, we'd get our little syringe and vacuum and get all the earwax out of your ear. And
did you have any medical emergencies?
Did have a chief wander in one time, white as a ghost, and there was no one else around in the entire medical area. And so, we got him on the gurney there and put a 4-lead on him and started an IV, and that's about all I could do. Called an emergency to the medical room. And so, of course, the Marines are the first one there. That's their job. And then the doc showed up, and then he goes, "So you did that okay? You did that okay? You did that okay? All right." And then I said, "Well, the next thing I was probably going to give him some nitroglycerin." And he goes, "Yep, that would have been okay too." So nobody died while I was there.
That's good.
I suppose that's a feather under your hat that you can be proud of.
Yeah.
I remember an emergency once you had left the Navy, that one of your corpsman friends there was a bad experience on deck.
Oh yeah. Stan, my buddy Stan, was on duty that night. It was after flight deck hours. The deck was dark. There was a Hornet facing across the deck, and across the deck was a loaded fuel tanker. And a couple of guys were just up roaming around the flight deck and thought it'd be cool to crawl into the cockpit of the fighter craft and squeeze the trigger on the joystick, and it shot incendiary ammunition into the tanker. The tanker blew up and shot burning liquid fuel across the deck onto the guys who were in the fighter. One of them, the one that was on the wing, was killed almost instantly, and the one that was in the cockpit lasted a little later. But that was a horrible thing. I got to talk to Stan about it a few weeks later.
And that kind of brings up the thing too, that in medicine, in the civilian world, when somebody has that trauma, there's like clinical psychologists or somebody they can go to. What happens on ship? Is that something that they wait for if they get off the cruise? They would obviously have that available, like at the Bremerton Hospital.
Right.
Yeah, I never experienced anything like that while I was on board. You watch these old flight deck videos of planes crashing into the superstructure, crashing into other planes, wiping people off the deck. None of that ever happened while I was there. But, you were always aware. You knew that at any second something like that could happen, and you needed to have your wits about you.
Well, and I'm sure that the chaplain would help out too if
chaplain,
somebody to
absolutely.
talk to.
Yep, doctors, chaplains, Yeah.
Yeah, true. The there was a plane called, wasn't it called the Maneater for some reason?
EA6. No, that wasn't the Prowler. It was the
A7
A7. A7. Yeah,
Intruder.
and they were just phasing those out when we got on. Yeah, I got to know one of the A7 pilots really well because he would come down for some things. He needed certain things to complete his medical portfolio, and he liked it that he could come in and get one-on-one attention, with us.
So
the reason why I asked this is like I teach medical coding at a college, and in the diagnosis book and I can't imagine like ever having to use this code, but there's a code that we can use when somebody's been sucked through a jet engine. And I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. Maybe post-mortem. I don't think people live through that.
Well, there is a video that I watched where a young man walked way too close in front of that plane while it was spooling up, and it sucked him right off his feet, and he had the presence of mind to spread his legs and put his arms out, and it sucked the cranial, which is what the flight deck guys wear on their head, sucked that off his head and fought it out the engine.
He was lucky.
And when the engine started to spool down, then the suction pressure came off and he fell out. And yeah, luckiest guy.
Lucky. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that flight deck footage too.
Might have a few nightmares for the rest of your life.
The other thing that I've seen is I don't think it was on the Nimitz. I think it was on either the Roosevelt or the Bush. They had an arresting wire snap under tension.
Oh, yep. Yep. We watched lots and lots of those videos. Flight deck is a crazy place to be.
So was there a time during flight ops you were ever on deck, or did the air wing have their own corpsman?
Oh yes, the air wing comes on. They got their own corpsman. There are 2 medical facilities forward and 2 medical facilities aft, medical treatment rooms that are staffed only when the air wing comes on, and then during flight ops. I imagine they hang out there too during areas when it's not flight ops.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say there was
a long ways down to barracks?
Did you say there was a air wing medical in the tower?
No, it's just below. It's on the level just below the flight deck.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a nuclear carrier.
The first
what
of
was
her kind.
First of her kind nuclear carrier? Tell us a little bit about that. Like, I imagine there's nuclear rods in there. I imagine there's people on board that are trained to handle certain things. But
did you have concerns of living and working that close to a reactor?
No, not at all. Nope. Yeah. So the iteration of carriers, the first nuclear carriers, they had reactors on subs for years and years, and they knew how those worked, and they knew they were safe and how many years they could go. So the first, like Enterprise class carriers, had 6 small reactors from submarines on them. And then the Nimitz was the first of her class to have 2 large reactors basically in the center of the ship. And we only ran off 1.
So redundancy then. It's like any other ocean-going vessel. You have multiple motors.
Yep.
Did they know how long it would be able to run off of, like, one reactor?
Well, when they built her, they had an idea. You extrapolate figures, based on historical, context. But we only used 1 reactor at a time. And they had no idea how long it would go. And it'd been 15 years since her keel was laid and everything was put together on the East Coast. And so we all had to get off the ship. And there's an opening that goes all the way down to where the reactors are. And they pulled the rods. Everyone's off the ship, obviously.
Yeah.
And people in the appropriate, CBR, anti-contamination and all of that, pulled the rods, determined that she had another good 10 years. They didn't have to worry about it. So, and we immediately took off and went on our Westpac.
That's really amazing.
Tell me what the Westpac's like. I'm sure there's, once you're out to sea, there's not much to do other than your set job.
Every day is full of things to do. Yeah.
Tell us what it was like after you set sail, and then maybe up to what was a port call like?
Sure. Well, so my Westpac started out in Bremerton, and it ended up on a rock called Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. So first you come out, you take a right, you go up and around the Aleutian, the islands, Alaska islands, come down on the other side, thumb the nose at the Russians, and then you just keep going until you get down. So our next stop was the Philippines. We stopped in the Philippines for a week or two, and then we pulled off, and then we went to South Korea. And South Korea, it was interesting that we were there at that time. I think partially the Westpac was part of this plan, but they were doing the 87 Olympics.
Oh, the 88
Olympics?
games.
Yep. And so we and our sister ship,
would have been the Vincent, right?
The Carl Vincent. Yep, we were taking turns. So we'd come in for a week. Our guys would all get Liberty, and we'd go around and see what South Korea is all about, which was very interesting. And then after a week, we would go back out, and then they would come in. And then they were providing air cover and everything for the Olympic Games that were going on. But I got to meet some really interesting people. Had no idea what South Korea was like. It's a lovely place. Very friendly people. Little kids walk all around. They don't have any fear because if anybody was to do anything to them, they would be killed in the most horrible public manner.
So,
that's why there isn't any crime there.
I'm sure that was a culture shock for you. Was this your first time out of the United States? And
yes.
Where were you from?
Well, I was born in Minnesota, and then I moved to Idaho, and then we ended up in Bremerton, Washington, which is in the northwest corner, across from Seattle, across the sound from Seattle.
So quite the culture shock to I'm assuming mid-20s guy from Minnesota.
Yeah, actually, Korea was very clean, very nice. People were super nice. I saw some really cool things there. These people dressed up in robes and banging drums and cymbals, going door to door. And I had run into this gal who was studying and wanted to go to Brigham. She was going to go to Brigham Young University. So she needed to learn some English, and I needed to learn some Korean. So basically, and we were off the ship every day. My buddy Stan and I, we would get Liberty every day for 7 days. And so we would meet her at this fountain in the middle of the city. And then we just go around and see all these different things. Well, the tax collectors is what that was. They're all dressed up in robes and making a big banging noise. So you knew if you were due to pay your taxes that day, boy, you were waiting at the door, because if you weren't forthcoming with your taxes, they made a ruckus and all the neighbors would look out.
Jeez. So you wanted to be the first one. You wanted to beat them to the door.
You heard that coming, and you were there at the door ready to go.
You didn't want to bring shame onto
No.
yourself or your household.
I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a big thing over there with haggling for prices. I personally, I don't like that. It makes me uncomfortable. Just tell me what the price is.
It's not the Minnesota way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But so the cool thing was she was speaking their language, and so she would negotiate to get us the best deal. And it was neat. So, we got, food, and I brought back a blanket, like a nice silk blanket, all embroidered and everything. And then we had to leave. And then our next port of call was the Philippines. And I think we pulled into Busan, and we were there for about a week. And then we left there, and we were going to go to that little country,
Singapore?
very clean. Singapore. And they said no, we don't want that big crowd of people coming in. So we sailed on by, and then we went from there. Let's see, where did we go? Philippines, and then we went to Guam, and then we went into the Indian Ocean.
Could you feel a difference because of the water temperature in the Indian Ocean?
Oh, yes. Okay. The Pacific is beautiful, clear blue. And when you come around the corner and you get into the Indian Ocean, there's a line. You could see the line. It is pea soup green on the other side.
Oh.
And instantly, we were nice and cool in the Pacific. It is hot and muggy and breathless.
So it's a visible demarcation line that you cross.
Indian Ocean. It's just like dead calm.
Wow.
Hot, humid.
Sharks.
And the water's green and shark infested.
Wow.
Well, we're counting down on time here. We're just probably 6-7 minutes away. I had a couple of other questions I wanted to ask. Did you ever get to meet like anybody important on the ship as far as like captain or any dignitaries that came aboard?
Yes, I did meet the captain, and all of the officers. From time to time, I had to deliver something up to the bridge. So I met pretty much all those guys. It was just real quick. Here you go. I'm out of here.
And how do you salute?
Oh yeah,
on the bridge, right? I mean, is that a little nerve-wracking?
Yeah, it is. It is. One fun thing was the Andy and Fergie came aboard. They flew on, and then he wanted to fly one of our airplanes, and I'm not sure if he did or not, but they were gone. The guys were gone for quite a while. So we ended up getting to talk with Fergie for quite a while. She was delightful.
So the Dutch and Duchess of York is what Duke and Duchess of York is who you're talking about.
Yep. And then a lot of their airmen and some seamen, officers, obviously. I mean, just hanging with all kinds of ribbons and gold and everything like that. But very proper, very polite, nice people.
That must have been cool.
It was cool.
Did Sarah Ferguson come into medical, or did Andy
they were in my medical treatment room.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
So where did they come aboard? Was it
they flew on?
Okay, so you were within range of a British helo, I take it?
No, I don't think it was a British helo. I think they came on the cod.
Okay.
Could you see the flight deck?
In the medical training room, I've got flight deck TV, so I could see everything from the bridge forward.
All right.
Other than that, every day I got to go look out my little window.
say hi to Angela Andrews from Milwaukee, Oregon. Hi, Angie.
Hi, Ange.
Glad to have you on.
Well, I mean, I wanted to talk to you guys for a little second here. So, our show on Blog Talk ends in a couple of minutes. If you want to, we could keep going on StreamYard for a little bit if you guys want.
Well, I do have a couple of questions, so maybe we could do that for a little bit.
Sure.
And those people that need to go can go, and those people that want to stay on can stay on.
Yeah.
Dan, I think you mentioned a couple times the Marines, like when you had the medical emergency, nobody was in sick bay, and one of the first people when you call on the ship that come are Marines. We don't really think so much about Marines being on board. Can you talk about that and the relationship there?
Yeah. So the Marines are shipboard security. They are responsible for protecting the reactor spaces, protecting the weapons cache spaces, the deck spaces, and also one of their corollary duties is to beat the corpsman to any medical emergency. And then when you get there, by that time they've already got them on a stretcher, and they're trying to help them out. And then you give them you get there and you do a couple little things and decide whether he's transportable or whether we got to do something else. And then if we're going back to the medical treatment room, they just grab that stretcher and go. Make a hole, and you better get out of the way. They will knock you down. Good guys.
So it's a foot race to try and beat you back to your own
they
department.
Always beat me back. Yeah, that was their pride and joy.
Well,
they had a little hobbit hole kind of between our berthing and the aft mess or the forward mess deck, and good guys, really good guys. I dropped down in their little hole from time to time where they were sharpening their knives and talking about Marine stuff. And they always like, hey, Doc, come on down.
That's nice.
I was blue side, not green side, but there were green side corpsmen as well.
So you just mentioned blue side versus green side. Can you elaborate on that?
So medical corpsmen, once they get to their duty station, can decide whether they want to go with Marines, which would be land-based, or blue side, which would be on ships. And I chose ships.
I'm sure, that's got to be another thing is being deployed with the Marines on land.
Yep. Now, Pastor went green side.
Oh, our pastor at our current church, Neil Risto.
Yep.
Neil
Risto.
He was corpsman too. Yeah.
So, as far as the Marines, I know you've told this story to me before, but you actually got to go into their berthing area. Can you describe the difference between the Marines berthing area and, say, a normal area where a bunch of guys would sleep?
Well, our berthing areas were small, maybe 15 people tops, really crammed quarters. Their berthing that I dropped into, they call it Marine Country, big, wide open, tables and chairs in the middle, a bunch of TVs, and then bunks and berthing all the way around the outside.
So maybe standard on the other parts of the ship, you're probably doing maybe a berthing per department of guys?
Oh, no, we had, like in medical, we had, I think we had at least 2 berthings in medical. My berthing and my rack was on the starboard side, right below the sea missile battery. And then running above my head were 2 6-inch JP 7 fuel lines. And so I figured if I'm going to take a hit, I'm gone immediately.
Maybe that's not a bad thing, right? Or I don't know.
The other
Instantaneous.
bonus to that was when it was waves, you could hear those waves wash against the hull.
I think that would put me to sleep.
Right to sleep, yeah. You didn't want to forget where you were and sit up. You'd bang your head.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Did that once.
Yeah.
All right. So we are all done with Blog Talk, but if you guys are able to, why don't we just keep going for a little bit longer if you'd like.
Yeah, and any questions can come in and we can certainly take those. We understand if you can't stay on, I don't think we're going to be that much longer. And just thank you everyone for being here. And Doc Zarn, Michelle Lancel had said, thank you for your service. And I think we're all grateful for that. He's got his corpsman hat. It says corpsman up. Which is one of their sayings. And then you've got your
standard
corpsman symbol. And then you have another hat that says CVNC8 for the USS Nimitz. And I was saying, well, 68 means she was the 68th ship.
Yep.
Or 68th aircraft carrier.
Yep.
Made. And you had a hat that said Doc on it because the Marines called you Doc, right?
They call me Doc.
Yeah, they call you Doc. And that's kind of cool because you even have people that come in where you work now that are Marines, and when they find out you're a corpsman, they'll call you Doc.
Yep.
So that's fun.
I see a guy pretty much every few months or so, and he always comes looks me up.
That's nice.
Yeah.
You know, and the Navy and the Marines kind of rib each other, don't they? But
it's good natured though.
Yeah,
we have
it's
very
good
high
nature.
respect
Yeah,
for each other. I wouldn't.
But I think
their job.
The Marines, especially like the corpsmen, for some reason.
Right. Well, if you look at the Marine seal, on the outside of the seal, it says Department of the Navy.
Oh,
but they like
it's
to
a little
overlook
burn.
that fact.
It's a little burn. Yeah.
It's a little, yeah.
Well, and some people may know here, but I am a living historian, and I was a reenactor, and doing World War II reenacting. I took Dad with me one time. He played my surgeon. I put him in World War II uniform, and I was taking him around the area we were at before the event, showing him the different people. And I was like, oh, I have a real good friend that was an actual Marine, and he reenacts Marines. So we went in. We went in to go talk to him. I said, oh, hey, Tony, how you doing? He goes, good. I said, well, this is my dad, Dan. He was in the Navy. They looked at him with a scowl on their face, said, what are you doing? Get out of here. And I was like, oh, by the way, he was a corpsman.
Yeah.
Their tune changed.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny.
Oh, what did you say so?
You're okay now.
Come on in.
So, CR, what are we doing next week?
Well, yeah, we can take this time to wrap it down a little bit. So next week, Friday, 7:00, actually going to be a continuation of this 2 to 3 part series, if we keep to have it going on. Is titled "The Days of the USS Nimitz," and next week it will be deployed in the home front. Going to be talking to both of you, just basically on what it was like being a married couple with a young child under the age of under the age of 5. What it was like with one spouse being deployed and the other spouse at home.
Yeah, I think that'll be a good topic. And, I have certainly at our school, at the college I teach at, we have a veterans center. And I'm always making sure with my students that I'm thanking them if they served, or, acknowledging them for their service as well. And I have such high regard for anybody with kids. But yeah, especially if one of your parents are serving. And we'll talk about that next week. But I also want to say maybe we can talk just a little bit about neurodiversity, because I fall in that category, definitely, and it does make things challenging.
Right. Well, I think tonight went especially well for tonight's inaugural episode of On My Mind with CR. And I couldn't have done it with anybody better than you guys. So I think it went along without a hitch. Some bumps here, still trying to figure out how to run the music. But
I keep thinking that we're doing the Philadelphia experience, because
I keep moving in and out, don't I?
Your head is like in front of the Nimitz, and it's like a blue screen, and
Right.
and like it kind of goes at like move your head a lot, like
lean back.
Right.
Yeah.
Out.
You're getting absorbed. Yeah, but that's great. No,
right.
I appreciate that.
So yeah, I wanted to thank you guys. Karen or Adrian, I keep calling her both names because she uses her first and her middle name, but she is actually going to be part of our show as co-host, and I'm sure we'll have Dan in from time to time to keep recounting his time, not only in the Navy, but he was a Forest Service firefighter. We might talk to him, have him back on the show again. Just wanted to thank everybody for tuning in for our first episode of On My Mind with CR.
Nice audience.
Thanks, bud.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you for your service.
Mm-hmm.
And we will see everybody next week at Friday at 7 CST. Thank you and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bravo Zulu.